first, I am going to tell you a little story because you know I always do that. Seven years ago, at this time of year, I was in the middle of a series of recurring dreams. Anybody ever had a recurring dream? Okay. This one was a little unusual from some other recurring dreams that I've had, in that it wasn't one that I had had since childhood. This is something that started in February 2009, and it was very short. It took maybe 10 seconds to dream. It takes longer to tell, way longer to tell than it did to dream. And I chalked it up to bad pizza. Never mind the fact that I didn't ever have pizza on the days that I had this dream. I just said it was bad pizza because I did not want to understand the message of this dream. A little bit of background. 7 years ago, I was so afraid to talk that when I got words of knowledge during church, I would text them to this guy. Because I was so afraid I would say the wrong thing. I was so afraid to talk that at that point, I was only leaving my house a couple of times a week to come to church, to run errands. I didn't need to because I had my teaching studio in my house. My students came to me. I was so afraid to talk or to sing that even explaining things to students, demonstrating passages for students, it took everything I had to get through a night of lessons. That's how much fear had taken over my life. I was afraid to leave the house. I was afraid to say things to people. I was afraid to talk. And I was really afraid to give out the words that God gave me. But I had a cell phone and a text plan. So God would be telling me things during church, and I would text Gary. At that point, I started having this dream. And in this dream, I was standing on a stage in this huge auditorium. I can still see it. Light wood paneling all over the auditorium, banks of plants at either side of the stage. 4,000 or so, maybe a little bit more people crammed into the auditorium. And across the back of the stage, behind me, was a whole row of flags. Seemed like dozens and dozens and dozens of flags, and they were all different. And they were so close together that the bases that the flagpoles were standing in were touching all the way across the back of this huge, broad stage. And in this dream, I wanted to be there. And I had something to say, and every single person in that auditorium wanted to hear what I had to say. Can you kind of understand why I thought it was bad pizza? That was so completely the opposite of my reality at that point. Now, the dream, as I said, only took maybe 10 seconds. And I dreamed it at least once every couple of nights. Sometimes I had that dream 3 times in a night. And it was exactly the same in every detail. It wasn't really a long dream. It was kind of like we interrupt this programming for a word from our sponsor kind of dream, and then it went back to whatever else. And for 3 months, I must have had this dream 50 or 60 times between the beginning of February and the middle of April in 2009. And I finally decided, because I was tired of having the same thing over and over and over again, that I should pay attention to it. Now, normally it doesn't take me that long. Normally I'm not that slow. But because it was exactly 180 degrees opposite from my reality, I was not accepting it. No, this is bad pizza. I hadn't had pizza for about 6 months, but it was bad pizza. This was the bad pizza that I had the previous September, you understand. Yeah. Right. I finally realized, because of the training that I'd had in interpreting dreams according to God's Word, that this was a God dream. I could tell because it never changed. I could tell because the feel was very, very positive. When I was standing on that stage talking to all of these 4,000, 5,000, whatever people, it was very positive. There was no fear. None at all. And it felt exactly right. And I could not get past that until the last night that I had it. That morning, I woke up with that dream still fresh in my mind. And I said, okay, all right. I give up. I'll do something about this. And I got online and I looked up an organization called Toastmasters International, which is an organization that teaches you speaking and leadership skills. And I had heard of it because I had a client a couple of years previously that was involved with it. And I thought he was nuts. He liked speaking in public. He did it competitively. I mean, this guy was a freak, right? But I remembered him constantly telling me about the practice that he had and how he got better. So I looked it up, and I found a group that met the next day that fit my schedule. That night, I had that dream one more time, went to the group the next day. I have not had that dream since. I have learned how to speak, not at the point where I'm speaking to 4,000 people yet, not at the point where I love every second of it, but that is a very, very good example of a God dream, not something that I was seeking. God has a sense of humor. Do you know this? God has a sense of humor. You are looking at the girl who got all the way to her freshman year in college without ever giving a speech, ever once. There were about 8 years where Davenport Public Schools did not require speech class for graduation. It was an elective. Well, I took the music electives. What did I need with public speaking? All during elementary and junior high, anytime I was assigned to give a speech, it was as part of a group project. And do you know that I always got put with the class clown who craved attention and wanted to have people looking and listening? So I thought, right, I'll do the map. I'll draw the diagram. I'll do the little model of the volcano while the class clown illustrates with his hands and his whole body how you erupt. You know, it's one of those weird life things. I never wanted to talk in public. I'm an introvert. I also have pretty bad stage fright. And just the whole circumstance, the public speaking, getting up in front of a group and talking is the furthest thing that I ever wanted to do. When you're a singer, you spend your career singing other people's words. You feel like you don't have any of your own. That was part of it. There were a number of other factors, but that was part of it. So I don't think I have seen the fulfillment of this dream yet, not the complete fulfillment. I know what the flags mean. Two things. First of all, that would be God signifying all the nations of the world. So at some point, I'm going to be speaking to people from all over the world. The other thing was something that I found out about 3 years ago. Freaked me out. Toastmasters International, when they have their international convention, they have a flag from every country where they have a member club. And they're stuck in, the flagpoles are stuck in bases that are pushed together, and they're so close that they touch. And they go all the way across the back of the stage. Still waiting to figure out what that means. But at some point, I'm going to be speaking at an international convention. So dreams.
Wait, you gotta tell us the awards you've won with Toastmasters.
Well, when I finally got the guts to join Toastmasters, which was 3 months after I started visiting, it took me another month and a half before I was able to give my first speech. 5 weeks after that, my club threw me alive into a speech contest. They said, hey, we're having a club speech contest next week. We think you should compete. I said, are you nuts? No. But then they said, but it would be good experience. And the speech you gave today was pretty funny. We think you should compete. You can use the same speech. We'll work with you to make it a little funnier. Okay. Well, what they didn't tell me was that I was the only competitor. So I did the speech, and I won. And then I found out that I had to go on to the next level. And immediately burst into tears. Because I'd gotten used to speaking in front of my club members. But this would be in front of the area, which is 5 clubs from the Quad Cities. Well, they kind of picked up the smithereens that I was in and pasted me back together and helped me with the speech over the next 3 weeks. And I went to area contest, and I won. And I thought, okay, I did this. I'm done. And they said, oh no, division contest is in another 3 weeks. Okay, so I went to a division contest, which is all of eastern Iowa, from the Minnesota border to the Missouri border and over as far west as Ottumwa. And I thought, all right, I'll get through this. I'll give this speech one more time. I'll get through this. And then I'm never leaving my club again. But I won. And they said, great, the district contest is in 4 weeks. You've got a whole month to improve on this. I have to go on? So that was my first district contest. That was the final level. I have been a finalist at the district level 3 different times, 3 different contests. That one was in humorous. I've also been a district finalist in inspirational, motivational speaking. And last spring, I was a finalist in evaluation. I'm learning. I'm getting there. And it started with a dream. Since then, I have been the district, which is the whole state of Iowa, plus a little bit of Illinois and Nebraska. I've been the District Toastmaster of the Year. I have been awarded the highest possible award in Toastmasters, which is the DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster. And because of the way God set this up, I did it in 3 years. I'm the first one in the state of Iowa to earn a DTM in less than 3 years. There are people internationally who have done it in 2.5. I wasn't trying to do that, but it was a God thing. And it started all with a dream. Okay. So, we have several activities to do tonight. First, we've got some writing. Yay, I hope you had cookies to sustain you for this. You're going to get lists and lists of stuff. I'm going to try to keep it to either 2 short ones or 1 long one every week. Tonight, we're going to talk about weather and what different kinds of weather mean in your dreams. Starting with an avalanche. When you see an avalanche in your dream, or when you are getting a word of knowledge for someone and you see an avalanche, there are many applications of these, not just dreams. But we're talking about dream language right now. So there's crossover. An avalanche signifies God's impending doom. When you see black crows flying out of a dark storm, black crows flying out of a dark storm, that means legions of demons flying out from a ruling spirit. That is, a religious spirit over an area. Legions of demons flying out from a ruling spirit, that is, a religious spirit over an area. That is, a religious spirit over an area. Anybody need that again? Perpetrating and spreading. Perpetrating and spreading. Make sure that God tells you to go to that city before you ever go there. That is a strong warning. Anybody need that again? When you dream about black crows flying out of a dark storm, that is symbolic of legions of demons flying out from the ruling spirit or the religious spirit over an area, perpetrating and spreading that religious spirit. That is a warning. And you need to be very, very, very certain that God tells you to go to that city before you ever go there.
So you would probably get a dream like that if you were planning to go somewhere.
Yes.
I mean, just anybody can dream a dream like that.
Right.
Unless there is a plan.
Right. Right. So, for instance, say I'm planning to go to Kalamazoo. And before I leave, about a week before I leave for Kalamazoo, I have this dream. And in my dream, black crows are flying out of a dark storm over Kalamazoo. That is God saying, Kristen, this is what is happening in the spirit over Kalamazoo. There are legions of demons flying out from the spirit. And if you go to Kalamazoo, you will encounter serious opposition and warfare and attack. Are you sure you want to go to Kalamazoo, Kristen? That would be the meaning of that symbol in your dream. Now, I'm not saying that this is about Kalamazoo. That was just the first city that occurred to my mind. So that was an example. That would be a warning dream. And I'd better pay attention to it and not do what I'm planning to do unless God says, go to Kalamazoo. Probably he's not going to tell me that. Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready for the next thing? Clouds. When you see clouds in a dream or in a vision or in a word that you are getting for someone, when you see clouds, that is a form of mental attack and it generally produces an emotional manifestation. Cloudy thinking, depression, those sorts of things would go along with that. Everybody got that? When you see dark clouds from the enemy, so if you see a vision of a storm coming with dark clouds, that means that something from the enemy is coming against you or against the person that you are prophesying over, whatever. When you see white clouds, those are from God. When you see dust, that means inactivity or neglect. It can also signify death, actual or potential death. That death does not have to be physical. It could mean something in that person's life is coming to an end. A season is coming to an end. Are you beginning to understand just a little bit how God speaks? with these symbols? Dust. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Dust is what is in attics. Dust is on old things. So it signifies inactivity or neglect. So there's always a little bit of a puzzlement to it. He wants you to pursue him, so he speaks in symbols. And once you start figuring out how God communicates with us, it becomes more and more easy to figure out when you see something or hear something that you haven't encountered previously. If you see a dust storm, that signifies lots of irritating spiritual attacks that take a long time to clean off. A dust storm signifies lots of irritating spiritual attacks that take a long time to clean off. If you see an earthquake, something is about to be shaken in a spiritual realm. This would accomplish the same thing as a storm, and it would shake things up.
So this is always a negative?
Not always. Not always. I've had a couple of earthquake dreams in the past year, and they were accompanied by the very, very bright, intense, glowing colors that I associate with being a communication from God. And some of the articles I've read lately, things on the Elijah list, are saying much the same thing, that God is bringing a new thing, that he's shaking things up, he's going to change things around. So I tend to place a little bit of credence in that. Has everybody got that? All right. Floods. That can be positive or negative. Positive would be a flood of the Holy Spirit. Yes, Lord, be it unto us even according to your word. Or it could be a circumstance or a situation that keeps you from where you are going. That would be the negative. The positive of a flood is a flood of the Spirit. The negative is circumstances or situations that keep you from where you are going. Hail signifies judgment. Lightning is God striking something. He can do that and not destroy it. It actually can multiply something when it's hit by God's lightning. Lightning is raw, uncontrolled power. What is God? Raw, uncontrolled power. You see how these symbols are working? Okay. Anybody need that again? Mist signifies the Spirit of God. Donna Blundell several years ago when she was the Anna over this house, the prophetess who prayed night and day, would see mist. And when she saw the mist, you could feel the presence of God. It was amazing. Rain. It depends on the context. It's either from God or it is adversity. Rain is either from God or it is adversity. It depends on the context. It rains on the just and the unjust alike. It could be the Holy Spirit raining down. It could be lethargy. It could be depression, or feeling blue if it's gray outside. Anybody need that again? When you see a rainbow, God's promises will come to pass. What was his promise to Noah? That he would never again destroy the earth. And he promised that with a rainbow. That was his covenant. When you see a rainbow, it's always positive. It means God's promises will come to pass. Snow is a whole bunch of good stuff. I know most people hate it, but it's a big, big positive. It means blessing, righteousness, purity, invigoration, recuperation, or refreshing and favor coming your way. That's why I get so excited when we have a big snowstorm predicted, because that's what it represents. Anybody need any of those things again?
I'm after invigoration.
Recuperation. Refreshing and favor coming your way. Storms. When you see a black storm, that's from the enemy, or it could signify emotions, usually negative ones. When you see storms that are white, red, blue, or green, those are from God, and they can signify godly purpose. Refer to the list of colors that I gave you last week for a more detailed interpretation of those. If you see a storm that is not a color that I've just said, it's got a compound meaning. Again, look at the list of colors that I gave you last week and pray on it for God's interpretation. When you see the sun or sunshine, knowing that God uses puns, can you guess what that might signify? Yes! Yay, Lorraine wins. Awesome. Jesus. When you see the sun or sunshine in a dream, that's Jesus. When you see a tornado, if it's dark colored, it's from the enemy. If it's white, it's from God. Tornado that's dark is from the enemy. A tornado that's white is from God. When you see a water spout, which is basically a tornado that happens over an ocean, that is something to do with the Holy Spirit. When you see wind, it's usually the Holy Spirit. If that wind is destroying things, it could be a warning. If it's a dark colored wind, it's from the enemy. If it's a white wind, that's from God. And the reference here is the 2nd chapter of Acts, a violent wind shaking the place. And that was when the Holy Spirit came on the apostles. Last thing on the weather list. If you see something that is windy, cold, and dark, that indicates an uncertain time. Look at the context. Windy, cold, and dark, it's an uncertain time. All right. Anybody need any of those again? All right. We are going to go ahead with our activities. And we're going to start with a little warm-up, the one that we did last week first. How many folks do we have here tonight? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right, let's number off by 5s. Gary, 1. Deborah, 2. Karen. Gypsy, 1. Sam, 2. George, 3. Lorraine.
1.
All right, let's have the 5s go back that way. Fours over here. No. No paper. 3's right by Karen. 2's up here. 1's you can go over here by the door. Got our groups? All right, can I have the 2's over here, please? 2's right over here. If you are at 2, we're still missing a 2. And we're missing a 3 by Karen. Go now to your places. Tina, I think you were a 3. Can you go by Karen? Well, they're not in the room right now, so we'll deal with that later. All right. Remember what we did last week? You were supposed to ask God to show you where a person was. This time, we're going to do the same thing, but it's a little bit more specific. Ask God to show you who is reaching for you But then ask him which hand they are reaching with, the right or the left. Now remember, this is not rocket science. This is just pure and simple childlike faith. Ask God to show you, and then go with the first thing that comes into your head. And if the first thing that comes into your head is left, then that person who is reaching towards you is reaching with their left hand. Take it on faith. That's a large part of learning how God speaks. Don't discount the first thing that pops into your head. Don't try to logic this out. Don't try to reason it away. Trust me, you'll learn a lot faster if you don't make my mistakes. Which was, no, I'm making that up. I wasn't. I was hearing God. I was sensing His presence. I was sensing His voice. But I kept telling myself, because it didn't fall into my logical, reasoning frame of mind, that I told myself I was making it up. Don't make my mistakes. You will never live long enough to make all of my mistakes. Just learn from them, okay? Trust me on that. So, one person in the middle, the other two walk around until I say stop, and then one or the other reach towards the person in the middle.
Then the person in the middle is reaching towards one of us.
The person in the middle is asking God, who is reaching? Could I have it quiet, please, so I don't lose my voice shouting over you all? The person in the middle is asking God two questions. Who is reaching towards me? Second question, with which hand are they reaching towards me? With their right hand or their left hand? So, in Kim's group, after you have walked around so that Kim no longer can feel who's next to her, no longer knows that Lorraine is on her left and Tony is on her right, then one of you two, without saying anything or making any noise, will reach towards Kim with one of your hands. Kim will be asking God, who is reaching towards me, and with which hand are they reaching towards me? All right? This is just a little activation exercise. There's no pass or fail. Nobody flunks. Just ask God. Okay, walk. Move around. Keep walking. Person in the middle has their eyes shut, and you are asking God. Okay, stop. Person in the middle, ask God who's reaching, and with which hand are they reaching? Person in the middle, reach towards that hand. Point to the person who's reaching towards you. Okay. Which hand? Okay. All right. Switch places. Somebody else go in the middle. Person in the middle, close your eyes. And walk. Stop. Somebody reach towards the person in the middle. Person in the middle, you are asking God, who's reaching towards you? Which hand are they using?
ringer thrown in. That was really unfair.
Okay.
I thought it was male.
Okay. All right. Switch and walk. Stop. Reach towards the person in the middle. Person in the middle, you are asking God, who is reaching towards you? Which hand are they using? Very good, George. Okay. Everybody have a chance? Oh, that's right. There's a couple groups that have 4. All right. Those of you who are in groups of 3 can sit, and we'll do these last 2 groups while everyone stares at you. No pressure. Okay, walk. If you have not yet been in the middle, get in the middle, and the other ones walk around. Stop. Someone reach. Person in the middle, you are asking God, who is reaching towards me? Which hand are they using? Okay. All right, back to your seats. If you have a Bible with you, Genesis 37. Genesis 37, verse 3. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, switch over to Genesis chapter 40. Verse 1. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the 2 men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why are your faces so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. So this is not a real good thing. When you have a very, very specific dream like that, and it's kind of a negative interpretation, that's an indication that maybe you need to make some changes. Maybe do some repenting. Now, I will tell you that warning dreams are normally not that severe. Normally, you're not going to find out that in 3 days you're going to be hanged. Okay? Warning dreams. Let me give you an illustration of a warning dream that I had. I had met someone who appeared to be exactly what I needed. He was very, very smart, extremely good speaker. He had all kinds of things that he could offer me and teach me about speaking. And we began to talk. And things started to go a certain direction, and I had a dream that was obviously a warning dream from God. And that was that I followed the direction that the relationship was starting to go, and in my warning dream, I was holding my heart, and it was in 2 pieces. If you get any more involved with this guy, he's going to break your heart. So I pulled back. We remained friends. But over the last year or so, it's become increasingly obvious that he has some narcissistic personality tendencies, which is very, very dangerous, very controlling, very manipulative. And if I had not obeyed and listened to that warning dream, I would be in a world of hurt right now. Just one small example of a warning dream. It doesn't have to be, you're going to be executed in 3 days. Okay? It's just, Kristen, be cautious. Don't go anywhere else with this friendship. Okay. One more short list. And then the rest of the time we have activities tonight. Money. When you see money in a dream or a vision or in a word that you're getting for someone, it means favor or loss of favor, depending on whether it's coming or going. Either coins or bills. There are some specific meanings. When you see $50 or a $50 bill, generally that signifies forgiveness of debt. There is a cancellation of a debt coming, or you are close to redemption. Now remember, in the Old Testament, the year of Jubilee was the 50th year. And that was when debts were canceled, property sold, could be redeemed, slaves could be redeemed. Does anyone need that definition again? Okay. When you see a bank, it can mean, depending on context, either favor or usury, being in debt, having to pay interest. Who owns the bank? Look at that, because that can affect the context. Is it God who owns the bank, or is it an unrighteous man? When you see a banker, that usually means the ability to give favor or open doors for people. When you see coins, that usually represents favor with people. Coins normally have faces on one side, so that signifies favor with people. If you see foreign money, that means favor wherever that money is good. So if I see a Canadian dollar, that means that I would be seeing favor with Canada or with someone of Canadian citizenship or descent. If you see money that is a muted color or black and white, normally represents greed. Greed. The condition of being greedy. Greed. Being greedy. Avarice. And last, paper money would be more formal recognition of favor. Paper money is usually larger than coins, so it would be more favor or an increase in favor. Obviously, the higher the denomination, the greater the percentage of favor. Does anyone need any of those definitions again? All right. Jane and George, I know you have to go.
No, I'm not.
Oh, just George is leaving us. Okay. We are going to have another activity at this point. Before I get you up, let me explain it. This is a little bit like the when I look at you, I see activity that we did last week. But it's harder because you are confined to one word. You are going to ask God for one single word for the person who is standing in front of you. One word. Ask God to give you a specific word, and it can be anything that comes to your mind, but it's only one word. Listen carefully to what God is putting in your mind. Again, don't second guess yourself. Don't count it up to the cookies that we had. Don't try to logic it or reason it away. Just say the single word that comes into your mind right after you ask God for a word for the person. Doesn't matter what it is. Now I can see little question marks popping out of all of your heads. It doesn't have to be a descriptive word. It doesn't have to be something about that person's characteristics. One time I did this exercise and I saw something that looked absolutely ridiculous. It was a yellow bird, which is 2 words. But I felt I was supposed to say the yellow. And the woman to whom I spoke that word burst into tears because she was going through a really, really rough patch in her marriage. And that morning, as she was having her devotions and praying over what she was supposed to do and begging God to heal her marriage, she saw a yellow bird in her backyard. And that, to her, was God saying, there is hope. I had no way of knowing that. I thought it was stupid. Yellow bird? Why am I supposed to say yellow bird? Are you kidding me? Yellow bird? But I said yellow bird. And that was the reaction. And Merle is nodding his head. I know you remember that. Anybody get a word that made him feel really bad? No. Because when we ask our Father for a good gift, He's not going to give us a bad one, is He? We can trust God. Okay, how about those of you who gave the words? How did that feel? How did those come when you asked God for a word?
Very strong person.
Okay, Sam got a really strong one. Anybody get pictures? Anybody hear a word in their mind's ear? Okay. Did anyone smell anything? Did anyone feel any sensations in their body when you asked God for a word for that person? So it was mostly Gary always feels something, okay? That's just Gary, he says. All right. What you just did was heard God speak. And you notice there were several different ways. Some people saw words, some people heard them, some people saw pictures. It's okay. You're not doing it wrong. You heard God correctly. The results were positive. They produced positive reactions. And that's an indication that it's God. The fruit is always a positive thing. It's a multiplication. It's an increase. So if you heard a word that made you feel good, that was positive, that increased your faith, increased your joy, you can trust that it was God who gave you that word. And the person who gave you that word can trust that they heard from God. The 5% of dreams that you will have where you are not in the dream are for another person, or it's a prophetic dream for the church. And if there's time tonight, I'll tell you about a prophetic dream that I had for a church once. So Dee Dee is the focus. She is preparing meals for several people. Now, what can meals represent? Food. Nourishment. Life. Okay, could it be spiritual food? It could. Right? She's making 4 meals. We talked about numbers last week. What does 4 represent? People are furiously checking their notes.
God's creative work.
God's creation. Or His creative works. All right? And then she was making these meals as an icebreaker to initiate relationship with different folks. I have this right so far? Okay. The first place she went looked very much like a house across the street from her mom and dad.
Right?
You were disappointed that there were other people there.
We were all outside.
You were all outside. Okay, I missed that.
Knocking on the door.
You were outside knocking on the door, and there were other people there.
Knocking on the door.
Also knocking on the door. And the man opened the door, and he looked over you at someone behind you and asked for food.
Food for tomorrow.
Food for tomorrow. Okay. And you said, well, I have food.
Right now for today.
Right now for today. Okay. Dee Dee said, I have food right now for today. You gave him 2 meals. You couldn't find the brownies for dessert. The bag broke as you were going back down the sidewalk.
And the brownies appeared.
And the brownies appeared. Magically.
Yeah.
Magical dessert. Wow, dessert is magical. That would mean it doesn't have any calories, right? Right. Okay. And they were Oriental. That is probably significant. I don't know that it would be significant that it was meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and coleslaw. I think it's just a balanced meal.
Okay.
Just well-rounded, balanced meal. All right. So, God, what does the house across from Mom and Dad's house represent? Okay, here's what I have. You have, and this is something I know in the natural, you have a heart for missions. You have a heart for the lost. I know that about you because I've known you a long time. So, knowing that about Dee Dee may color this interpretation a little bit. But since she has a heart for the lost, she's preparing meals to have a relationship with these people, what I'm getting is that something that you have long dreamed of, perhaps since you were a teenager, I'm not certain. Usually when you're dreaming of your childhood home, that indicates something in the past or something that happened at that point. So I would say something that you have long dreamed of doing, which would be the missions or reaching people for Christ. There is a new opportunity coming up that you may be able to take the nourishment, the spiritual food, the bread of Christ, to some people. Who are searching, who don't realize yet that you have what they are searching for. Is this resonating inside of you?
You can. I thought about the past too.
Mm-hmm. What are you getting, Gary?
One of the things that stuck out to me is that the guy overlooked her. I think that's a play on words. She was overlooked initially.
Yes.
The missions, she was overlooked in missions initially. It was a future thing, but now it's closer. It's now. You've got the food now.
Right.
And so the food, you're ready now. You're no longer being overlooked.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
One thing.
Gary?
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought the preparation, in the sense that I was prepared.
Yes.
Because, this guy needed something, but he was looking for somebody to help him tomorrow, and I said, I'm ready today.
Yes.
So just the preparation.
Yes. Be ready to give an answer in season and out.
Okay.
Deborah?
What I got from that was that she is prepared for a journey that she's about to take, but the fact that she didn't have the dessert, she may think she don't have everything she needs for the journey, but you do.
Okay. Good point. Double portion.
Okay.
Could be.
I was thinking with the dessert is that not only did you have the basic food they needed, but somehow you had something extra for dessert.
Yes.
Something we don't need, but we sure do love.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? Okay. So what did you think about the exercises tonight? Did y'all do pretty well with hearing God say right or left? Generally? All right, let me ask you this. Did you initially hear something very faintly saying one direction, and then you heard another louder sound going no, left, or right, whatever the other one was? Anybody encounter that? Okay. Was the second voice the correct one, or was it the first one? Okay. This is important. So listen up. When you ask God to give you something for someone, expect an instantaneous answer and go with the first one. The second one is second guessing yourself. As I said, I have made every mistake in the book. Don't waste your time making the same mistakes that I did. You will never live long enough to make them all. Right? Learn from my mistakes. When you ask God in faith for a word to bless or help or encourage someone, go with the first thing that comes into your mind, because that's your daddy. He's not going to give you a bad gift. Don't second guess yourself. Don't try to logic it away. Don't try to reason it away. All right, we have just about a minute left. Who would like to share one of the words you got in our second exercise, one of your single words, and how it made you feel? What did it mean to you? Anybody? Deborah.
Okay, I got a word, and I didn't take it as a negative word. You want me to say the word?
Yeah.
It was death. And to me, it didn't make me feel bad when I heard that. It made me feel like something was about to be over, and then something was about to begin.
Exactly.
So I felt real good with that word. I didn't feel negative with that
Good.
word.
Good. And that is something, when you dream about death, it usually does not mean death. It means the end of a life season or the end of a time period. But it doesn't mean that you've just cursed that person and they're going to die. Okay? Or it doesn't mean you are going to die. When you dream that someone has died, it usually signifies a conclusion or an end of a season or a job or a period in their life. Okay.
I have a question. Supposing there's somebody in your dream, you know they've died, but in the dream they're alive and you talk to them, but they didn't say nothing back to you.
That can represent a number of different things. Usually, if you see someone in your dream who has, has died in real life and is no longer on the earth, it could be representing something. Look at the person's name. Look at their relationship to you. Look at their position. For instance, if I was dreaming of my old choir director, then that would tell me that that has to do something with my job because I'm a voice teacher. If I was dreaming of Mr. Anderson, then it would be something to do with my high school choir director. So look at their relationship to you, who they represent, what their name could represent. I will have some resources for you for looking up names next week because people's names can have great significance. I had a dream 4 years ago where I was very, very involved with a person that I was not normally involved with. And when I looked up his name meant God's peace. And I went through a very turbulent time right after that in my life. But the peace of God was a constant presence and got me through that. All right.
Can I mention something the Lord spoke to me this week?
Sure.
Okay. I've gone in and out of dreams. When I taught a dream class, I dressed probably 26 times in 30 days. And then I got tired of it, and I stopped dreaming. As far as I was remembering, I just let it go. I didn't want to do it anymore. Didn't want to interpret it anymore. Bored with that. Blah, 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 blah. And then they started coming back, and so we've been paying attention. Only to this point that in the middle of this last week, because I dreamed 3 or 4 times this week, and that I can remember the pieces of, and they had significant different kinds of meanings to me. But I was standing next to the sink, and the Lord put on my heart, I want you to know that your dreams are your friends. They're not your enemies, they are your friends. And so as you go to sleep, consider your dreams that are coming in the night to be friends of yours.
Yes.
Rather than something to cause you confusion or stress, embrace them as your friends, and they will become more and more intimate with you.
Right. Good point, Gary. Also, when you ask God for a dream, do so with expectation. So you have the same homework assignment. Ask God for a dream and put a pad of paper and a pencil And if you're not Deborah, a flashlight by your bed. Okay? If you're Deborah, you just need the pad of paper and a pencil. Okay? Notice that I didn't say you have to dream. Your assignment is to ask God for a dream. Write it down. If any of you want a couple of illustrations of how to quickly record a dream without writing it out word for word and being awake for 3.5 hours in the middle of the night, I can help you with that. But don't be afraid that it's going to be a bad thing. A lot of times God dreams are full of just incredible colors. Colors that we can't see here on earth. The colors are bright, intense, glowing. They have life inside of them. They're full of sounds and music like you've never heard before. Everything is more intense. A lot of times I can smell things in my dreams. I have talked to some people who also can do that, who also have that sensation. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong, that your dreams are wrong if you don't dream exactly like Kristen. Everybody is different. God speaks to each of us individually and in different ways. And all we have to do is ask Him and ask in expectation. Put a pad of paper and a pencil next to your bed. Ask God for a dream. When you have one, write down what you can remember. That's all.